All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Home Services Summit webinar series. This is show number 40. So we've been doing this for a few years, and it's always great to get with a franchisee of one of the five-star brands. In this case, it's Danielle from Mosquito Shield. We had a great conversation backstage just talking about her business and hitting the magic moment of cash flow break even this year. And I'm looking forward to diving in more and learning from Danielle. Before we do, I want to make sure I just get through a few announcements, making sure that everyone's aware of the annual event, which is coming up here on November 6th through 10th in Orlando. Danielle attended our first HSS, which was in person last year in Orlando as well. And it was a great event. Can't wait to do it again. I think we already have about 600 people registered for this event. And so if you're not registered and you're listening, now is the time to register. And my name's Scott Abbott, the CEO of 5-Star Franchising. If you have not attended one of these interviews in the past, the format's pretty straightforward. There is a chat. And in fact, I'm going to open it up right now so I can see. There we go. And if you've got any questions at all during the conversation, feel free in the chat, just load those in there. I'm watching them, and I'll make sure that I ask your questions of either Danielle or I. And then near the end, we'll make sure we leave some time available just to talk about anything you want us to talk about regarding home services, Mosquito Shield, and Danielle's journey in business ownership. So with that, let's get it kicked off. Thank you, Danielle, for joining us.
Yeah.
How's your day going so far?
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about Mosquito Shield and all the good stuff. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I know backstage you were saying that you bought a couple territories at first, and so I'd love to hear this is a story. You bought a couple territories in West Palm Beach or Palm Beach, and then expanded quickly. So go ahead and give us the background. How did you hear about Mosquito Shield? What got you in the business? And take us to today.
So, in a quick nutshell, because I can be a little long-winded, my husband and I were doing life planning. I was coming out of a 20-year career in the country club industry and needed a change. And we were thinking, like, how do we have some flexibility in our life? So we started exploring business ownership, and he met someone, a franchise broker on LinkedIn, and then he kind of pitched a lot of different brands to us. So in that process, it was like gutters and, cleaning services and mosquito business. And I'm like, yeah, I pretty much hate mosquitoes. Doesn't everyone? Like, they're never going away. I feel like this business could be good. We actually entertained a couple of different mosquito businesses, franchises, and Mosquito Shield was one of them, but we just really loved everything that like their story. Just, we really enjoyed our the vetting process and doing the validation calls and listening to other owners and just kind of what that looks like. What does it look like? And so we bought 2 territories in the southern part of Palm Beach County. It was the Boynton Beach and Delray Beach territories. Where we actually lived was just north of there, and that was actually the territories that we wanted. Little did we know that that those 3 territories would be up for sale from an existing owner. Unfortunately, she had some other like some family dynamics change in her life.
Yeah.
And so she was looking to sell. And I was like, so Brett, that's my husband. I'm like, I guess we're going to be 5 territory owners. He's like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? Because that was not part of the budget.
Yeah.
Right. So we had to come up with some more money, and we shuffled some things around, and, year 1 was a really good year for us. We had over 100 customers, and from let's say our launch date was like March 1st, which it wasn't, because we had to take on this other lady's like 20 existing customers. Mind you, during this whole time, I was still working full time. I had just resigned in January and I was giving them like a 3-month notice because I'd been at the same company for 20 years and,
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was fair. So, I was working and then I was like, oh, well, I have to go out and spray because we couldn't really afford to hire a technician at that point because we only
Yeah.
had 15 customers. So, that very first part of owning this business, like you go out and spray to
Hmm.
save on the payroll. And because like, what is your technician really? What else are they going to do for that period of time? So, so I had to quickly come clean with my existing boss. And I was like, so I'm going to be out spraying for mosquitoes. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? I'm like, this is our new business venture. And we just acquired customers and we have to go out and I have to spray their properties. Right. So it was,
You should be the country club and all those customers and just
yeah,
sign all around it.
right.
I mean, those are the customers you want, right? It's
Yeah.
the country club customers that you want.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually I have customers in the country club community that I used to work in and they're like, wait, you're in the mosquito business? Or I'm gonna fire my other business. I'm hiring you. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So
Hey, it works. That's great.
um but yeah, so now fast forward to where we are today. Last year was a difficult year for us. We, we were in a drought here. I know it's kind of hard to believe that here in South Florida, but we were actually in a drought and it was very dry here. Not a lot of mosquito pressure. So this business is reliant on the weather because
Yeah.
the more rain and the humidity and the heat, the more mosquitoes you have. So,
Yeah. So there's probably a real like connection with you're living it, you're in the market, you're in the area, you know when the mosquitoes come out. Uh,
mhm,
you want to be accelerating your advertising and your marketing right when there's a lot of water and humidity and it's the right recipe for mosquitoes. It
correct.
is interesting how like once you own a business like this, suddenly you're kind of hoping for certain, like the plagues of mosquitoes and the bad news around mosquitoes is great for your business, right? And it is interesting how maybe in the
Hmm.
past you'd look at that a little bit differently than you look at it today. I'd love to just go back if you don't mind Danielle, because you mentioned how you discovered franchising was
Hmm.
through your husband was connected to through LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and then you started evaluating different concepts. If you don't mind, I think in franchising and for all of us who are listening, I love to understand like that journey for you. What got your husband's attention? Was it just a timing thing like I'm just done working at my job. It's been
Hmm.
20 years. I'm looking for a change, and that message came at the right moment? Or was it already on your mind? Like, were you already thinking, I'd like to get into business for myself?
So well, first, my parents owned a flower shop in my little
Mm.
hometown in Central Florida for about 10 years. I helped my mom in that business and when I was in high school and, so I kind of understood the concept of owning a business, I guess. I, however, never envisioned myself as a business owner. My husband, on the other hand, um, has always wanted to own a business. So it
Okay.
he is really and it's kind of funny because he's still in the corporate world and I'm running the business, but
Yeah.
that's just how it laid out because I was ready for a change out of my career and he's been in sales for 30 years
Yeah.
and been very successful in that. So it just kind of made sense the way that this was all playing out. But so basically, I think that it really was, I guess you could say a timing issue or not issue, but it was all good timing, right? Like
Yeah.
he happened to be connected with someone on LinkedIn and they were posting about franchise opportunities. And I mean, quite frankly, he told me he was going to take this call with this guy. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what kind of scam is this? Like, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking like online.
Yeah.
Wait a second, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I'll be on that call because I, I always like to, I have a million questions always.
Sure. Yeah.
He always asks so many questions, but they're valid. somebody else has these questions.
Yep. And when
So
you're, as you engage into the process of learning different concepts, I mean, it sounds like Mosquito Shield really must have spoken to the fact that your husband and you could kind of tag team this in some ways, right? You get to kind of scratch the itch of having business ownership
Mhm.
and begin to build equity for yourselves and a company you own that has that kind of, you mentioned flexibility before,
Yeah.
but at the same time, your husband can kind of remain a breadwinner for the family
Mhm.
while you're building something. And
Mhm.
and did the other concepts have that same allure? I'm just curious. You mentioned gutters and a couple
Mhm.
other different concepts. Was that really why you kind of leaned towards Mosquito Shield? Was because you felt like, oh, this is something I can do on my own while you're running, continue your sales career? Or like, you just tell me, like, what made you kind of I know there's a membership aspect you brought up
Mhm.
that was connected to your prior career, but just love to hear what made you think Mosquito Shield was the right choice.
Yeah, I guess, well, in one of your other podcasts, with the Card My Yard lady, I can't
Yeah,
remember her name, but she was so great, and she was like, you got to know your strong suits, and that really spoke to me because Brett is extremely talented on the marketing side. Like, he gets the whole like Facebook marketing and Google and all that, self-taught, and he's analytical, and he's kind of like our numbers guy. And
yeah,
I'm totally fine with, I had to go back to school because in our state we have to have like, our licensing is very different than in other states. So I ended up going back to school. I have a secondary degree now, and I'm, a state operator, pest control state operator. So, um, but I think that the brand, I don't know what it was about it really. We loved the fact that it was reoccurring revenue
mm-hmm,
and that they had been around for 20 years, and that, the employees in the corporate office had been there for so many years. And that speaks volumes when you
yeah,
don't have a significant turnover. Like, look at me coming from also a family owned company from my previous career. I'd spent 20 years there, and it was very little turnover in my departments, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just, it speaks volumes, in my opinion, to, the brand that you've built and the company that it is. And it didn't feel like a turn and burn or, that type of scenario. So
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if that
You know,
answered the
when
question.
we were talking backstage, you mentioned that I think I asked you the question, how big does this thing get
Mm,
for you? And you own 5 territories. So your empire building in the mosquito control world. And you mentioned that there's a few other owners, the Tina and Rick and Janice and the Fulmers, and I think you mentioned that that's the dream that one
right.
day I could. How big are their businesses?
Well, I mean, well, they've been around for over 10 years, both of them, I believe, like 11, maybe 12.
Yeah,
And they have thousands of customers. They're not the only ones that have thousands of customers, by the way, but they're like the original.
the OGs.
Yeah, they're the OGs in
Uh-huh.
this ownership group. So, you know, um, they're that's why, like, you look at the size of our territory and where we're located, South Florida, Palm Beach, like, there's thousands of potential customers for us.
How many households are out of 5 territories that you own? How many households are in those 5 territories? Do you know?
Oh, well, I think that when they sell territories, there's 50,000 eligible households per
Okay.
territory,
Yeah, so
like,
you've got like
roughly.
250,000 plus
Yeah.
homes that are in
And
your market.
And listen, every time I turn around on every corner, there's starting at $1 million new home communities being built. So you're like,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that number is going up.
Yeah, it's growing. Yeah. And if you get just 1% of that, that's where you start to get to that point where like Tina and Rick or
Mm-hmm.
Janice and Fulmers, you get to that point where you have thousands of customers. Everyone would love to be, that's the dream, right? Everyone wants to be there. Aside from the vision of what you have for what you can achieve, what do you absolutely love about Mosquito Shield? Like it's been a couple of years. There's
Mm-hmm.
challenges in every business, right?
Yep.
You could start a mosquito company or a bathroom company we talked about, or it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what company you're going to start. Startups are challenging, they're taxing, but there's that reward at the end. I think we all capture the vision where we can get to. I'd love for you to get maybe just dig in a little bit for me, like the day to day, the things you love about the business. Do you love killing mosquitoes? Or do you get some personal satisfaction from knowing that you're killing those things, or is it like, do you love the customers you're dealing with? Like what do you love the most about the business?
Okay, so well, first, you really don't have a ton of interaction with your customers like you do at the initial, and then maybe if they're having breakthrough in mosquito activity, or if they're just like leaving their house to go whenever you show up and they're like, hey, how are things? And they're like, good, bye, right? So it's like a very different relationship than what I'm accustomed to from the country club world, right? But when I'm out spraying, it's almost therapeutic. I don't know. It's different because you're all on your own. You're one
Mm,
person. You can move as quickly or as slowly as you want to move quickly because it's really hot outside. You want to get back into the van where their air conditioning is. But, helping someone on their property
mm,
and trying to solve a problem that they have so that they can enjoy their outdoor space that they've worked so hard for, because a lot of our customers have incredible backyards, pools,
yeah.
tiki huts, outdoor
Uh-huh.
grilling,
Uh-huh.
playgrounds, putting greens. They want to enjoy that with just
Yeah.
their family, friends, kids, you know. And when I walk out there and I'm like, hey, so and so just finished up on your property. By the way, there was a 5-gallon bucket loaded with larvae. I dumped it. You want to make sure that you keep that flipped over.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, thank you so much. So I have an investigative nature. So I like kind of trying to find that
Mm,
um challenge, and it's frustrating when you can't, because
yeah.
like I'm kind of diverting a little bit, but this business is it's about managing expectations, right? There, like you said, I think maybe before we got on this, like there's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet in biology. Like these
Right.
mosquitoes are never going to go away, and every property is unique. So when you explain this to a new customer and you are trying to manage their expectations, like you're probably going to see another mosquito.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Like, I don't know what's going on your neighbor's property, or
Right.
maybe you just put down like, 20 yards of mulch. You know how many bugs that brings in? Like, you're going to have an uptick. So
Yeah.
it's about two-way street communication and having an openness about you as an owner so that your customer feels comfortable reaching out to you.
I'd love for you to you mentioned also backstage that, these 5-star reviews once in a while.
Mm.
How does that make you feel? Like, do you get some personal enjoyment to get to see someone just tell you how much they love your service and how you helped improve their quality of living outside their home with their families? Is that rewarding for you as
Hmm.
well?
Super rewarding. I think we have 46 or 48 reviews,
Oh, wow.
and we're at like a 4.8 rating. Um,
Wow.
and that's a big chunk of our customer base. I mean, we have 160 customers. We've 50 reviews. Like, that's a pretty big chunk there. But the reviews are really important, and I've learned that. And
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, their other owners are like, yeah, you're just gonna reach out, and Brett, you gotta reach out, you gotta ask for these reviews. I'm like, I don't want to ask for reviews. Like, I just felt so uncomfortable, like
Uh-huh.
totally outside of my comfort zone. Like, I don't want to ask for reviews. So luckily, there's this program that we use that sends it out for you.
Yeah, I think it's
that
called
has.
Opinion. It's
Yeah, it's
automated within
opinion.
your software. It's
Yeah.
probably just worth even noting that, at Mosquito Shield, you guys use a software called Pokemos.
Hmm.
Pokemos is integrated with a number of different tools, which we're going to
Yeah.
talk about in the marketing front. You mentioned SendJim as a tool that can actually do some
Hmm.
automation for you. So, which I love that stuff. We're going to go there in a minute because I think
Hmm.
technology and how we can make the business easier is really important. And in general, as a franchise brand, how critical it is to create systems that just run for our owners in a way that it's just in the background. Like you just
Correct.
hit a button and then things just happen. But you said something that I want to double click on. You said getting outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of actually forcing those conversations. My poor kids, I've got 5 kids. You probably see them behind here.
Yep.
And like if any of my kids tell me they're scared of something, like they don't even tell me any longer because if I hear that, I'm like, oh, okay, well that means we're gonna do
We're
that
going.
thing. Whatever it is that you're uncomfortable with, we have to do that thing to the point where like we're jumping in the water with sharks in Hawaii because my kids are scared of sharks.
Oh, geez.
So we've dove a number of times now with sharks because they're scared of them. That's
Yeah.
sorry, that's my approach to life in general. But you mentioned, being uncomfortable asking customers for reviews, and you have a tool that automates this for you. I think it's probably worth us talking about what are the things that are uncomfortable in business ownership, or that maybe you don't enjoy as much being a
Hmm.
Mosquito Shield franchisee. What's some of the challenges, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, owning a business is hard.
Mm,
Let's just put that out there, right? Like, I mean, I guess some people are just like naturally built for it, but
hmm
business ownership is hard because, unless you bought like an existing business that's already running a well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah.
But when you're building it from no customers, it's hard because you really have to, it's like cooking spaghetti. You got to throw it up against the wall and see what sticks, right? Like every
Yeah.
market's different, and my marketing tactics may not work for your territories, and your marketing tactics might not work for mine. And that asking people for reviews, I'm uncomfortable with that. Like, I don't push back when I do more of a soft sale.
hmm
I'm not like a hardcore salesperson, but that's not what my training was in. My husband, he's a sales guy. He's gonna ask you why. Well,
Yeah.
why not? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, right? But that's my personality. Like, I'm a soft sell, and okay, like I'm not here to force you to do something you don't want to do. I think that one of the greatest things, and I know you were like, what are some of the more challenging things? I think that some of the more challenging things that you have to do as a business owner is be vulnerable with yourself. And if you're in this with a partner, whether it's your spouse or like a business partner, you have to be vulnerable with them, and you have to own up to what your strengths and your
hmm
opportunities are. I don't really like to use weakness because I don't really think that is, I think it's an opportunity for growth, right? When you're uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, you're growing, right? So that's, Brett and I have really had to learn how to communicate differently with each other because we've only communicated in a personal setting, which is
Right.
totally different than in a business setting.
Yeah.
And there's a way to communicate with me, and there's a way not to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's different for everyone. Whether it's communication or accounting or going back to school and getting another degree, like there's a lot of different things that go into it. But if you're not honest with yourself and vulnerable to be able to take accountability and things of that nature, then it's going to be difficult, even more
You know,
challenging.
I really appreciate you sharing that because in life in general, we should always be playing to our strengths, right? There's things that we're all really, really good at, and there's things that we're not as good at. And
Hmm.
that is, I had on the show, I think it was 2 months ago, we had Larry and Svet, who were franchisees of Gotcha Covered. And they mentioned something similar to you, like Larry, total salesperson, Svet, total people person, different skills, different abilities, and they learn to play to those strengths. And I think that's one of the opportunities that exist in business ownership, understanding
Hmm.
your strengths, playing to those strengths, and then you build on the best parts of what
Yeah.
you have to offer. And having a partnership, I think, is really valuable. It's cool that you and that Derek is your husband's name?
Brett.
Brett, sorry.
Hmm.
You and Brett have you know, an opportunity to learn together is a good way to describe it. You mentioned that Brett is great with numbers, great on marketing, and so I want to spend some time on marketing and how you go about growing your business at Mosquito
Hmm.
Shield. I know backstage you mentioned some things work really well. I think you talked about Facebook ads as being one of the ways that you brought a lot of customers in, and then Facebook's ads stopped working as well as it used to work. You
Hmm.
mentioned lawn signs, and you can do a service sign on a lawn after you get the job done, but you can't just lawn sign anywhere you want because the county has some rules against that. So you mentioned your vans and having vans in the neighborhood, driving around in the neighborhood, also make the phone ring.
Hmm.
You mentioned Send Gym. And so
Hmm.
if you don't mind, those are four of the things we talked about. When you got the business going, kind of talk us through what worked really well for you,
Hmm.
and then how you've had to modify or change your acquisition strategy over the last couple of years.
So when we first started, our very first weekend was like President's Day weekend at a home show, and Michael flew in for it. I mean, we were nervous. We hadn't even been through training. I mean, we were nervous. And so Michael flew in, and Michael Morehouse, right? And
Yeah,
he
he's the brand
comes
president of
in.
Mosquito Shield. Yeah,
Yep. And he really walked us through everything. I mean, I think we got like 15 or 20 customers, and I mean, a lot of them are still on with us today.
that's awesome.
And then we had like another one Memorial Day weekend, and then we had one in the fall. We did like 3 home shows in our first year, and we got a big chunk of our customers from home shows, which
Do
was
you have like a
incredible.
special offer at the home show, or like how did you get people to say yes there in person?
Yeah. Trying to think back. Um, oh, I think we were giving like $50 off your first month because at that
Mm,
time we were $99 a month,
yep.
no contract, but we gave you $50 off your first month if you signed up at the home show. So like you got 2 treatments for $49. I mean, we were like losing money, but they're still on with us. A lot of them are still on with us. So, that, I mean, it panned out, right?
Yeah.
Um, but every home show we try to do something a little bit different, so because last year I think we did 3 or 4 home shows last year. It was a lot, and it was a drought season. We did not have a very good year, but we
Mm,
spent, like, our home shows are not like the normal home shows, right? We're in Palm Beach County, remember that. So our booths are like $2,000.
wow.
It's an expensive home show. So we
Yep.
have to, in order for that to work for us, you have to have like a minimum 15 to 20 customers sign up over the course of 3 or 4 days, and they have to stay on for the year. Like
Mm-hmm.
to make it or 6 months, like at least they've got to
Yeah.
stay on. So, um, so that was like a big chunk last year that kind of hurt. We also, our first year, we did quite a bit of print ads, which I know people are like, don't do print. So, but we didn't do like the penny saver or that kind of
Right.
stuff. We did more of there's like dedicated magazines that go out to certain communities. So you could pick the community that you wanted this to go in. And
Yep.
at the time, we were living in this one community, and it was an option for us to be on the cover of this magazine. So Brett and I were on the cover with our dog, and they did a 2-page spread on our story and Mosquito Shield, and it went to our community, right? And then we coupled that with like a donuts and coffee thing that we sponsored in our clubhouse. So it kind of got the buzz going a little bit in the neighborhood and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And then we did a couple of other things. We've stopped all print ads. Now we're like almost completing year 3. We're done with print
Okay.
altogether. We're not doing that anymore. Because we're just not seeing the results. You spend $100 a month, $100 a month, or $300 a month. You got to have results. And
that's what's critical. You've got to be measuring. It's always, I use the expression often in business, you've got to feed what works and starve what doesn't. And you mentioned earlier, every business and every market has slight variations where you may find, social media is fantastic, but maybe it's not great in your market. Who knows? Maybe Yellow Pages is great in Palm Beach, right? It just depends on the community you're targeting, the customer you're targeting, the size of the home you're targeting, and getting very specific, and then making sure you're measuring that constantly. So I love to hear that you are watching each of the different campaigns. You mentioned the home shows, winning 17 customers at your first home show. I think you mentioned that back then it was probably a little bit different, but today the average customer is about $1,250 a year, right? So if you've got 17 customers with you for a year, that's almost $20,000 of revenue off of a home show. So you can get these home runs, and then you go, all of a sudden, you have a drought, and the home show is in the middle of the drought, and there's no mosquitoes. You're not going to have the same result, right? I joke about this often because I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, where our provincial bird is a mosquito. It is absolutely ridiculous. And we had a board meeting there, and we had our board members at our cabin, and the mosquitoes were so bad. People were trying to drink mosquito repellent. Like, they thought if they could just ingest it, maybe somehow it would get through their bloodstream and it could take care of these mosquitoes. And they all realized at that moment, when mosquitoes are biting like this service, like, I'll pay whatever it takes. Get someone here, take care of the problem. And so the secret in marketing is always timing the marketing around the periods of time where people want to buy. And I'd love to.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, just coupled off of the weather and the timing, right? Like, we learned last year that around this time, it's like soup outside. Like, people are like, oh, when I'm sitting out back, I'm like, how long are you sitting outside for? It's just literally 150 degrees out, and it's 80% humidity. Like, so it's there's not a lot of people sitting outside right now in our market. Up north, this is the money time, right? Like, it's nice out at night, and here it's still 87 degrees outside at nighttime, 90 degrees out at night. So we trim back on our marketing right now. And then as we head into the fall and those, cooler nights, cooler for us nights come, then we'll start to ramp it back up.
I love that. It's your ebbs and flows, and trying to time your spends to have the best return on your investment. Years ago, like, I'm going back to early days of franchising for me. We owned a company called 5 Star Painting. And coming from up north, up in Canada is where we started. The season's pretty short, right? Like, really, winter is pretty much, October through May. Like, you could have snow on the ground at any of those months.
Right.
And if it's snowing, then you're not really painting outside. But as we got to Thanksgiving, a lot of our franchisees used to say, well, this is where my business slows down substantially. How do I grow the business? And they would try and spend money over Thanksgiving or Christmas to make the phone ring. When actually that's the worst thing to do. You don't want to take your message to a customer that's not interested. You want to take your message to a customer who's interested in the moment of that there's a problem, and you're the solution for that problem. One of the things that you mentioned was SendJim. So I want to spend some time on this, because route density is super important in the mosquito control business, right? You want to be able to pull up to a block and have multiple homes in that area on that route versus just one. It increases profitability, and so with that, if you don't mind, just tell us about how SendJim works, why you like it, and how is it integrated with the software, and how you can use it.
Yeah. So, SendJim platform that Mosquito Shield Corporate has actually gone in, and they've populated a bunch of different editable postcards, different sizes. You pay a certain monthly rate depending on how much you think you're going to be sending out, and you get credits. And each size postcard is worth a certain amount of credit. I like them because it's like a one-stop shop. You go in, you design your postcard, you pick the area that you want to go in, and send these to, and then you pick your frequency. So like I normally do four postcards at a time, and I space them out either every week, every other week, every 10 days, just kind of depends on where we are in the season. Are we leading up to a holiday, that kind of stuff. Um, and then you set it and forget it. And I was so nervous the first time I included my own address because I wanted to see number one, what did these postcards look like in person? And
Yeah.
number two, did they actually come when they were supposed to come? And they did. And they were of great quality as well.
Oh, good.
Right. So our business, whatever, we'll call it a luxury. It's not a necessity, right? Like this is an
Sure.
add-on to your life. It's a luxury to have it. So it should be represented in your marketing materials, right? You can't send
Absolutely.
out like a flimsy brochure or postcard. It needs to be nice. It's a gloss. It's a very nice postcard. Anyways, so really quick on the back end, their team is extremely responsive and like they're on it. You have
Mm.
a question, you just pop it in the chat and somebody's responding to you in like less than 5 minutes.
Oh,
If
that's great.
you want something changed and it's like not in the editable section, I'm like, hey, we're not seasonal. Can you change this to year round?
Yeah,
They
that's a good
change
point.
it,
Yeah.
right? Like, no problem. Get it done for me. No time. So the other part of it is you upload your customer list. Now I think that they're integrated fully with Pocomo's. I don't really know because I already had my list uploaded. But you can go in and like I have a specific street that I was targeting with whatever, there was 200 homes on it, and I selected the street. I had 5 customers in that area,
Hmm.
and I just said, do not include my customers,
Yep.
and they excluded my customers, and so now everybody around them got it, right?
Hyper targeted. I absolutely love
Mhm.
that. You mentioned, you did 4 of them, and I'm sure you've all heard this. Frequency is so important in marketing, right? It's one of the things you consider when you look at your marketing mix is how frequent are you getting that message in front of your customer? I've heard 8 to 10 times is what you need before you win a customer. Frankly, I think it's probably getting more than that now because as the market is becoming more and more sophisticated and everyone's understanding the rules of marketing, then all your competitors are doing something similar. So you've got to find ways to get in front of the customers in a hyper-targeted way like you're mentioning, which I love that you're doing that. Um, it's probably just worth just noting, recently Mosquito Shield invested in some media and
Mhm.
to help support some campaigns. Maybe just talk about some of that. Like what ads do you have that came from that camp? Are you using them yet? What do you like about it?
Mhm.
How would you use the new material that's being produced by the corporate team?
Well, there's a multitude of ways that you can use these ads, right? Because I think that they publish them in like 15, 30, 60-second spots. There's still shots. There's a lot that went into these commercials, and they're beautifully done. I really like them. There's great message. I think it's easy for the consumer to follow along and understand what we're trying to do and accomplish. So as an owner, like I have full access to those, go in, put them on my social media or, create an ad, use them in Facebook, do whatever we want to do with them. But then on the other side, if you're using a digital advertising agency, somebody who does it for you, they have access to this and they can use it. The other way you could use it is on like CCTV. I've heard that we've not gone down that route just yet.
Sure.
Where next year, perhaps with our marketing dollars, will be allocated to that. But there's been some really good results with these videos on CCTV as well.
I think that's one of and I'll just speak to just in general the power of being part of a franchise, right? Is all franchisees are contributing some small amount of money to this pool called an ad fund. That ad fund then is pulled together to create some assets. I think the investment was $120,000 to create
Mm-hmm.
all of the video, the actors, the shoots, the different snippets, the outcomes, the direct mail pieces of messaging. It's like a fully integrated campaign. something that a single person, if they wanted to have done for themselves, it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
But being part of a franchise, you get to take advantage of that, that very specific tool set without having to pay, an arm and a leg. Michael just put in here, $300,000 was our cost of that campaign.
Yeah.
So let's use it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for the reminder. It's we made a big investment. These are tools that can be used for years to come. They're being integrated on our websites and so forth. And you definitely want to make sure that you take advantage of that. So thank you for that reminder, Michael. We're coming close to the end of the 15 minutes here where you can all ask questions that are listening live. So feel free to load any questions you have in the chat, and I'll make sure that either I or Danielle will answer them for you. Okay, I want to come to the margins of the business. Just a profile. This is helpful for I think all owners. When you land a customer, what does it cost for you to service that customer? Did you ever broken that down? So I know you mentioned, it's about $115 a month to spray a customer's home in your market. How much of that is spent on the cost of goods sold, the actual product or the fuel or the cost associated with actually doing the work?
Yeah. So, and I was just looking on my toolbar. I have a whole spreadsheet that another owner in Central Florida had put together and sent it to me.
Cool.
And it breaks it down because we have our proprietary blend, natural oils, controlled product, rain shield. And what that looks like is, it's several dollars per gallon of product. And, then you have to tie in how long is your technician on the property. I typically do it by 15-minute increments. I generally budget 3 sprays per hour. Now, I know that on certain routes he's going to do 4 or 5 sprays per hour, but a general rule of thumb for me is 3 sprays per hour, just because of how large our territory is and the drive time in between stops. And so I think that, and if Michael's listening, he could put this in the chat. But I'm pretty sure that, you want your cost of goods sold somewhere in the mid 40%, somewhere around there. We're not there yet. I mentioned earlier, we have such a kind of a unique situation because we do have the 5 territories. We ended up having to buy a van earlier than expected.
Okay. Yeah.
We have to pay for an extra parking spot now because of that, our numbers are just a little different. We also, there companies that we buy from, sometimes do promos where if you buy X number of gallons of your controlled product, they'll do a hold on it, and you can pay it at a later date, and then you get a rebate and all these things. So,
okay.
Of course, we did that last year, so we have enough controlled product to last us probably until next June. But
good.
But that impacts
smart. If you can save money on your product by buying in bulk at a certain period of time and get a little bit of a break and a rebate, then you should be doing that.
But that impacts this year, right? Because you had to pay for it all. But in any event, I digress. I joked years ago with my accounting manager at my last job. I was like, so I dropped accounting 1 in college, just letting you know up front, right? I'm my husband's the numbers guy. I am not. But I have learned QuickBooks because I had to. So I'm now doing the books, and I'm trying to learn a lot more about that, but Brett is way more involved. And Dave Levesque, our new VP, he's been working with us on our numbers and, our P&L statement and, how to kind of, really dial in line by line to see where your expenses are and all of that.
Yeah. You mentioned, and this is probably worth just restating, you plan 3 sprays per hour. Many people have with technicians go to 4 to 5. what do you pay a technician? Is it $25 an hour roughly, or what's roughly the pay of a
We
technician?
So we have been very blessed with our technician. He's amazing. He's been on, so we had a technician and he quit with no notice. And so that put me in the van. This was in year one and we had like 80 customers. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. Cool. Um, and so then we found our current technician and he's absolutely wonderful. He came to us also from the hospitality world.
Hmm.
So I spent quite a bit of time with him training. And we pay him a flat weekly rate. And then we pay him a new customer bonus no matter where they come from.
Okay.
Like, we don't care. His job is not to get customers. His job
Mm-hmm.
is to spray and to
Yep.
take care of our existing customers. So, and our new customers. So he gets a new customer bonus. Half is paid in that month, and then the other half is saved until the end of the year and paid out kind of like as an end of the year um, incentive. And then he gets paid per house spray.
That's awesome.
So, hmm
Yeah, the business itself tends to be pretty low cost at the application level, and especially as it scales. And that, on that note, let's just talk about like where today you're at the business is doing roughly 160, 170 customers.
hmm
Where can it go as you think about next year? What do you expect the business to be at? What's kind of the pace of growth you hope to achieve?
I mean, we would love to add on like another hundreds of customers next year if it's feasible, but we really have to hit like another 50 customers in the next 6 months. Like that's like the low, right? We would love to be at the 300 mark by this time next year.
Let's do it. Let's make that happen. It's like,
hmm
with that, let's kind of segue to the next conversation, which is HSS. I know you attended. We talked about this backstage. You attended the Mosquito Shield convention prior to HSS, and you said to me backstage, after being there, this is like I wouldn't miss any of these things for the world. This is where I think
hmm
you said you love the camaraderie.
Yeah.
I call it community. I think we need to provide community to our owners. That's one of the benefits of being a franchise owner. In a brand like this, you get to spend time with people who are doing it, right? You get to
Yeah.
learn from the OGs and the new OGs and the people who are
hmm
all climbing. In fact, I think I was looking at some numbers recently at Mosquito Shield, and almost half of the owners of Mosquito Shield are growing at 40% or greater.
hmm
It's because there's a lot of new franchisees, and they're all adding customers. They're all earlier in the game,
Yeah.
outside of those original franchise owners, and so talk to me about what you loved about HSS last year. What are the things what are some of the takeaways you got? What's some of the value that you pulled from that event?
So I really love I loved the speaker that you had. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but he
Dan
was
Thurman.
incredible with the backhand springs. I
Yeah,
mean,
Dan Thurman.
the
Yeah,
tumbler. He was
yeah.
incredible, and what a great message he had. I really liked how you all really took the time to dive into drive,
Mm.
right? I think that's really important to, kick off meetings with, what your mission is. Like, this is what we stand for. And coupled with the other guest speakers that you brought in were, they're top notch. They're the best in the industry, right? Like, that's important for us as business owners to hear some of that. I know some people are like, we don't need to go listen to this. I'm like, you kind of do. Probably you need to listen to it more than,
Hmm.
you know, but I think that, um, as a whole, right, you are, you're part of a community, but you are an individual. You're by yourself here, right? Like Brett and I, with my one technician, we're by ourselves, right? I know that Michael's a phone call away. Scott in Central Florida, phone call away, right? He's like my go-to Florida owner. He's a phone call away. Like owners are phone calls away, but the phone is totally different than in person. And to be able to have an in-person conversation and build a relationship and a rapport with someone that you may not ever meet other than here,
Mm-hmm.
it's invaluable. It really is. It's something that that I look forward to every year. And I've met some incredible owners who now we're like texting buddies and like talking
Yeah.
on the phone, and you get to sit and have a couple of drinks with them if you want,
Yep.
like go to dinner. It's just a different atmosphere. And I think it's important not just for your own brand, but for all the brands, because we all are doing something different but the same,
Yeah.
similar but
Yep.
different, right?
Yeah, it's huge learning opportunities. And thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I'll encourage all you listeners who are paying attention that, yeah, if you haven't registered already, please register. We'd love to see you there. We actually have at this event the Iron Cowboys coming to talk to us about running 101 Ironmen in 101 days, which is mind blowing. And for me, it's a testament to what the human body and spirit can accomplish
Mm-hmm.
if put to the test.
Right.
And I think sometimes a startup or launching a new business is kind of like doing an Ironman. You're
Yep.
going to be put to the test, and those who stick through and make it happen, they see some incredible results, which is
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. My last question for you, as we just kind of wrap it up, is around your involvement on the FAC. You chose to join the Franchise Advisory Council or Committee.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been involved with the FAC?
Well, everyone is involved, right? Everyone's assigned to a region,
Uh-huh.
and then each region has we'll call them a leader, right? Like a liaison, right? So
Yep.
I'm the liaison between the Southeast and corporate, right? So corporate has, I say corporate, Dave Levesque runs the FAC for
Yeah.
corporate, and
Sure.
he will host FAC meetings, and we come to these meetings, the FAC leaders of each region. We're given information or we provide feedback,
Yeah.
and then we go back to our group and disseminate as necessary. But when you become an owner, you're part of an FAC region, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been the liaison for 2 years, maybe.
Okay.
And it goes right back to I like camaraderie, right? Like I'm a team player. I want to be there to help people and new owners and any questions that they have, because man, I was there and it's not easy. Like when your backpack isn't starting and you're like, what is wrong with this thing? Like,
Uh-huh.
who am I going to call? Right? I can't get somebody
Yeah.
on the phone over here. Like, let me call Danielle. I'll help you. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to help you however I
Uh-huh.
can. But yeah, so the FAC is really, it's a good sounding board for owners. Like what's working with your marketing tactics, because they're all owners that kind of touch each other, like their
Sure.
territories in
Yep.
a lot of cases touch each other. So, so it's just a great place for people to come together and be sounding boards for each other.
How often do you guys meet?
We meet once a month. Sometimes it goes to every other month. It just really just depends. But right now we've been meeting once a month.
And does David handle the agenda? Does he set that out in advance, or is it something that you as FAC members bring stuff to the agenda?
So my FAC meets once a month. And then in addition to that, like we meet with Dave once a month, and he does do an agenda. I do a totally separate agenda for my group.
Oh, so you actually meet with all the fellow franchisees in the Southeast. You're
Once a
making
month.
sure that the information you're taking from the FAC meeting with David gets down to all the franchisees in your region. I love that.
Yeah. Like I may send out an email, like if they're
Yeah.
like Home Services Summit,
Yeah.
send an emails, like, and I'm bringing it up and we're talking
great.
about it. And I'm like, you guys, why aren't you registering? You have to pay for it anyway. Like you might as well register for it. Like go and register. Like I'll send you the link. So I send the link out, so we're doing that as reminders. We do, the survey that was sent out, like reminder to take the survey and, that kind of stuff. So, a lot of it is kind of housekeeping, but other stuff is like,
Yeah.
when you're having like vapor lock in your backpack, you're like, how do I get this fixed? Like,
Mm,
what is the solution here? Or like your backpack, like whatever, your van or something's going on, right?
yep.
And you need help. And this is a really good place to get it.
I love it. That's definitely part of one of the values of being part of a franchise system like Mosquito Shield is having that communication loop and staying
Mhm.
connected and learning from each other. So thank you, Danielle, for joining me today. The conversation went great. I thought it
Yeah.
would really, it flew by. It's been an hour. Can you believe it? So thank you
Yeah.
for joining, and you've been fantastic today.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. Look forward to seeing you in November.
Yeah, I look forward to that as well.